All right, can everybody see that okay? Thumbs up? Thumbs
Yeah,
down?
looking good.
Thumbs up. All right. So I'm more than happy to answer more questions about the Candela projects. It was a great project. It was a fun project. It was an interesting project. I'd be happy to answer questions. I would like to propose that we change the discussion a little bit for this second half, for this second hour. And I'd like to talk specifically to the Passive House designers and engineers in the audience. And I'd like to make a couple statements, ask a couple questions, and I really am interested in hearing people's feedback and their thoughts. To kick that off, I'd like to just start with this quote right here. This was from a Rocky Mountain Institute paper from last year, and it sort of stuck with me for obvious reasons. And they point out rightly, I think, that if we're really serious about meeting our climate goals, that's going to mean something like 5 million building retrofits a year to a zero emissions level. So 5 million buildings every year for 10 years. So I know this is a happy hour, so everybody's got a couple beers in them, I would hope by now. So I'll do the math. How'd they get that number? It's about 113 million buildings in the US. You want to retrofit 50% of them over 10 years? There's your 5 million buildings a year. Well, what does that mean? Like, what does that, I put that in human numbers. It's about 400,000 buildings every month, or to put it a slightly different way, it's about 13,000 building retrofits to a zero emissions level every single day for 10 years. So make it even more real. If you're an architect or a designer working in the US, there's about 21,000 architecture companies in the US. Those are US numbers on the screen there. That would mean that your firm would be responsible for about 250 zero emissions building retrofits every single year for 10 years, assuming that architects were going to be involved in every one of those, of course, which isn't always true, but let's say for the purposes of argument, this is the orders of magnitude that we're talking about. Now, that's a big challenge. That's a big undertaking, obviously. What I would really like to ask, or what I'd really like to talk about on this call now, is not so much about the policy or the sort of finance challenges there, but on our side of the equation as designers, engineers, architects, on the tools and design and process side of the question. And I'd like to just ask and pose as a question to everyone on the call right now, like just as a thought experiment, set aside those enormous policy and financing challenges just for a second. Let's just, for purposes of argument, say the finance people get their shit together. They come to us someday and they say, guys, we found the money. It was between the couch cushions. It's time to get building. Let's go. I want to ask if you could scale up your own Passive House design and engineering process to handle even a fraction of that demand, even a fraction of that amount of work. Could you do it? Seriously, given how hard you work now, given the amount of hours that you work now, given the amount of time that you work now, given how little you see your kids now, could you do it? Could you really scale up your process to accurately, efficiently, and quickly output that level of work? And given that your name is going to go on every document that goes out the door, would you stand behind it? Would you be confident that it's accurate? And what would it take to actually do it well? Could you? Yeah, no, that's what I thought. It's going to take a century's worth of Saturday work in order to meet a challenge like that, given our current process and timeline for Passive House projects. Now, that's not true of everybody's firms. Some of you guys are amazing firms. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, that's fine. I could totally do that. We could do 250 zero emissions buildings tomorrow. If so, awesome. But most of the firms, myself included, we would mightily struggle to attempt even anything close. So I want to ask, in the few minutes that we have together as a sort of community here, what kind of techniques can we use to improve our own accuracy and our speed? How can we get better? How can we do a better job of doing our job? How can we deliver better projects? How can we do more of them better and faster? And I don't know the answer, but I'd like to offer just one partial solution that has worked really well for us in the past. And I'll offer a couple examples. And then, as I said, what I'd really like to do is hear other people's thoughts and opinions on these kind of things. So the solution that I'm going to offer here comes from a completely different industry. I actually started out as a builder long before I ever became an architect, long before I ever started doing Passive House projects. In the construction industry, and in particular in the woodworking industry, there's this idea of a jig. It's a really simple idea. Sometimes you have to do something really hard. Sometimes you have to do something many times. Sometimes you have to do something really fast. So you take some time and you make yourself something kind of sloppy, something fast, something quick, often kind of imperfect, to help you do your job better, faster, more accurately. And I'd like to ask or pose the question, could that idea, could that model, could that metaphor be applied to the design profession? And I'd like to suggest that digital workers, those of us who sit in front of a computer all day, need to develop enough skill with our own tool to create our own small, quick, often really imperfect digital helpers or tools to help us do our jobs better. We're going to even come close to achieving the type of, or satisfying the type of demand that we think we're going to see over the next 10 years. I think we're all going to need to improve our skills dramatically. What do I mean by that? Well, let me offer two small examples. I'll offer one really small example and then one slightly larger example, and then I'll shut up. Let's take a problem that we run into all the time. You're going to deliver zero energy buildings. You need to model them effectively. We're modeling these buildings. It's a huge amount of data. The data is not getting smaller. The amount of data is not going down. We need to figure out how to manage immense amounts of data. Okay, that's a big problem. That's a large problem. Let's make it more specific, take it down to a really specific level. How do I manage room level data? Room numbers, room names, TFA, floor area, volume, fresh air flow rates, air handling hookups, all of the various bits and pieces of information at a room level that I might need to manage in a building information model. What tool do I use to do that? Do I use a spreadsheet? Do I copy and paste things from here to there? Well, there's not really a tool, is there? I mean, maybe there is. Maybe you guys have one. I'd love to hear about it, but I don't know of a tool that does that really well in a passive house context. So let's make one. Right? We're working in SketchUp. We're doing WFI Plus modeling. We're doing design PH modeling. We're using SketchUp. That's a fine tool. It's not a great tool. It's a fine tool. So let's build ourselves a little digital helper. It's about 2,000 lines of code. It's fast. It's quick. It's easy. It's not very sexy. It's not a piece of software. It's a small digital helper to help us do our job better. And always with an eye towards data flow. The data that flows in has to flow out. It has to flow out to something useful. It can't stop in the Excel model or the WFI model. It has to flow out to a document, it has to flow out to an actual piece of paper that can be used in a certification context. So we build the tool so that all of that data flows seamlessly from end to end. How might we use this? Well, we're using it every day on projects. So this is the kind of tool we build. We use it on all of our projects to help us do our job better, faster, more accurately. This is a renovation project in Manhattan we're working on, Mike Ingway and his team. Great project, commercial on the bottom, residential up above, multifamily, mezzanine levels, complex interior floor plate. How do you manage it? How do you manage the data? You gonna make a spreadsheet, copy and paste? No, you're gonna make yourself a building information model. If there's not a tool that exists that allows you to manage the information you need to manage, you're gonna build yourself a tool. And you're always gonna do it with an eye towards data flow. So all the data that flows in has to seamlessly flow into both the physics model, so the energy model, and your final certification documentation and your error checking documentation on the back end. We're not going to do things like write tags about information. We're going to make it so that the data actually flows seamlessly into those tags. The computer does the hard work of remembering all this stuff because you won't remember it. I know I won't remember it. I'll do it wrong. I'll type it in wrong. I'll get a decimal in the wrong place. We're going to make the computer do the hard work there. That's one super small example. That's one really hyper local example of the type of thing that we're talking about. Let me just offer a slightly more extended example. This is the workflow that we're working with right now. So for most of our projects nowadays, we've shifted platforms away from SketchUp, not to get too off into the weeds on the tools. SketchUp doesn't seem to be a great tool for data management. We're using Rhino. It's a much more robust information and data management platform. It allows us to do a lot more things, a lot more customizable, a lot more transparent. That's a really important quality in all of our tools that we prize. We're using this to simultaneously create dynamic models and PHPP models from a single source building information model. We're using a tool that we internally call IDF to PH. If you do Energy Plus modeling, you know IDF files. So we're able to translate back and forth between IDF files and passive house files or PHPP files. But the important thing here is not the physics modeling. That's all pretty well understood at this point. That's pretty well managed. The important piece here is about the data flow in and the data flow out. So we have a whole new set of tools that we're using to push data in and manage data. And then just as importantly on the back end, we've got a bunch of data flowing out into an automated reporting tool. So in particular, we're using a web-based reporting tool. So, yes, we used to do, and we still do, quite a few PDF reports, and make a bunch of Excel graphs. That's not great, right? That's not a great process. That's not very automatic, and it's time consuming. It's prone to user error. It would be much better if we could come up with a process where the data flows seamlessly from your data in your building information model through the physics model and manages the fire hose of data that comes out of those physics engines, those physics models, whether it's PHPP or Energy Plus or what have you. So we do an automatic web-based reporting that parses through the data, scrubs the data, turns it into something human readable and manageable. What does that look like? It's really straightforward, right? So there is no building information management tool to do that in Rhino currently. Okay, fine, build yourself one. So a couple thousand lines of code. You're gonna manage component libraries, windows, surfaces, TFA, domestic hot water, thermal bridges. It's no different than design PH. It's not hard, there's no rocket science here. You build yourself a tool to manage the data properly. So all the data gets input in this information management or building information management tool. And then again, on the back end, we're going to use a web-based platform to allow us to see and parse that information very easily. So this is just an example of the type of web page report that we create now for projects. This is obviously just a small single family project. This is an automated report. So this is rigged up and connected to the PHPP. And the important piece here is that it's a live web page. So all of this data is updated as the PHPP updates. The whole team is able to see the updates in more or less real time as we choose to update them. But the most important part is that it's code. They're not pictures, they're not JPEGs, they're not copy paste, they're not screenshots out of an Excel model. It's code, it's building itself. We don't build the web page. We set up the structure, we feed it the data, and it creates the model every time that we update our PHPP or we update our modeling. It radically improves the amount of time it takes us to create a product like this. In addition, I just want to show here, I like this part very much. We added in a little bit of section here so that we can manage additional data in addition to the stuff that just comes out of the model. We're also able to log things like our inputs. So for instance, I have to keep track of all my wall assemblies, different materials. Well, keep track of it all inside of something like a web page, right? That's going to be better than some dead Dropbox folder. Keep track of communications with our contractor friends. We're able to submit details through them. We can provide links to different products that we might like. All of this, again, is largely automated and live. It's rigged up right to our information model. We're able to do things like shading calculation and again, represent that relatively quickly. Right? The important part here is the data flows very easily from one to the other. We have all our thermal simulations, we have window and door details. All of that stuff can easily get logged in something like a little mini project website here. It's not a big pro course site. It's not very, high tech. There's really nothing fancy to it, but it allows us to manage that data really efficiently. And again, the most important thing here is that we're making the computer do the hard work. I'm not very good. I don't pay attention to things very well. I can pay attention once, but as soon as I have to do it again, I start to lose track and I start to screw things up. So I make the computer do all the hard work. Right? You build the structure and you let the data flow and you let the model work. And so I would like to propose that we all need to begin to build those skills. These are critical skills for people who work in front of a computer every day, and they're critical skills if we're ever even going to come close to, as an industry, satisfying the type of demand that we know is coming down the line when it comes to things like building energy retrofits over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So if that's of any interest, let me know. You can send me my email right there. And of course, mostly what I'm interested in is to hear anyone's thoughts or opinions on the call here. Be more than happy to hear your thoughts.
Ed, we're gonna just take a moment and breathe and just let what you just did sink in. So everyone just like, whew, that was intense. Like, again, you can see the virtual background. We just went hyperspeed. Pause for questions. We're going to dive into it. I've never seen the Zoom chat go as fast. If you had a question in the regular show, it's gone. It's disappeared. I'll have to go find it. So Ed, have a sip. You deserve it. Literally, I will buy you beer for the rest of your life next time I see you.
As soon as I can leave the house again, I'm going to take you up on it.
Yeah. We're going to just kick it over to Andy real quick, just to do a little quick giveaway, and then we're going to dive into this. So just keep that momentum of all the questions and conversations you want to start, because I can tell it's going to get intense. So Andy, give something away.
All right, guys, we're going to give away 2 free t-shirts. They're Past Pals Accelerator branded merchandise, so you can look cool like him and her. I had to type up everyone's name here, so I'm sorry if I misspelled anyone. And just so you guys don't think I'm full of shit, here you guys are. And I realized there's like 10 Michaels here. So Michael, Lama, Levine, Maines, you guys are all there. All right, let's go.
and you still have to be here. So if the three people
Yeah.
that just left, you're out.
Where's the drum roll?
Okay.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Sai,
Sai.
win number one.
Yeah.
And let's go for win number
See,
two.
if you start and get on in the pre-show at the early, you get to win. He's a diehard, so he deserves a prize today.
Go Sai.
And we got Caitlin. Are they here?
Brooklyn. She's the Brooklyn girl.
Yeah.
Here,
Well,
Bob, you-
They're all
again,
here.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Okay, cool.
could be delivered.
All right, congrats, guys. Off to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, the real Andy. Zach.
Yes. Okay, great. So inspired by Ed's work here around the jigs, we're building a section of the website, a platform for sharing about and sharing these resources with one another and with the global community. So there's an article that's on the homepage of the Accelerator about this from Ed. But the two things that we want to talk about. One is if you've got a jig or a digital tool that you want to share, please do so. We want to have a sense, really gather everything together. So send it to info@passfastaccelerator.com. And secondly, we're going to be hosting a summit about these tools and these jigs in a couple of months. So probably our plan is to do that in July. So stay tuned for that. It should be really interesting. And, I think judging from the stream in chat, there are a lot of great ideas out there. So please send your ideas our way. Thank you.
I almost think that email address should have been jig@passfastaccelerator.com. but info, we'll stick to info to keep it simple for you guys. Okay, where do we begin with this? Okay, I know, geez. I about 10 people wanting to pop in here.
Find somebody who thinks it's stupid and disagrees. That's what we want.
Yes.
Yeah. Somebody tell me it's ridiculous. That's what we want.
Well, I do appreciate the one person said that this was a kind of a sales show. You're going to be like, and it's free, and here you go, and you get 2 for the price of 1, and we'll give it to you in 6 weeks. And
yeah, no, that's a super important point, because I was saying this the other night. The important thing here, this is not software. You're not building software for somebody else. You're building it for yourself. You're building your own workflow. It's not something you sell to somebody else. It's not something you package up. It's not something that can be mass marketed. What I'm suggesting is we need to build the skills to build our own workflows. It's important. That's a good point.
Sorry, guys. I know I'm doing a poor job here, but I've never seen the chat go so fast. So I personally can't even keep up. I need a processor just to keep with that. I think Scott first. So get Prudence. Do you want to chime in? Go for it.
Yeah, I can chime in and say a few words while you're helping
Scott.
get the questions organized.
Yeah.
It seems to me that it's not only about building the skills, like acquiring some programming skills and understand what's happening in terms of AI and cloud computing right now that could actually help us as an industry, like branching out into those areas, but also familiarizing ourselves with lean construction principles. So for example, what you're saying, creating your own workflow, a lot of that is understanding for ourselves what is standard work. In other words, what are we doing again and again and again, where we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. We want to invent a jig that helps us get it done faster. And then every time we use the jig, we understand how we might modify or improve it so that next time it's even better and it's even faster. So it's this continual improvement feedback loop. And as we continue to work with each other more and more and have repeat teams where we're working with the same architect or the same developer, they all have feedback about what was useful with the tools and the process as well. And it can just get more and more integrated as our teams get more and more integrated. So the same tools can almost be used throughout the entire process, from the very first meeting where we lay out all the rules of, okay, this is a passive house, here's what you're going to do, to the very end, the lessons learned. And it's like, well, what did we do? What did we learn? Here we are. So
you're so right. You're entirely right. And I think that your point about continual improvement is so important, right? Each project should be 2% faster than the last one. Should be 2% better than the last one. And that's how you make improvements, or is that slow accretion of small changes over time. You're not gonna one morning wake up and say, oh, I figured out, I know how to reduce my time spent by 80%. That's not how it works, right? It's not how any other sector works. It's not how it's ever worked.
One of the parts of your idea I really like, Ed, is the notion of a web page that could quickly be shared in a lot of directions. One of the joys and terrors of my life for the last few years is that we haven't had the benefit of doing millions of square feet of passive house sequentially, like do one, learn everything, pause, take a look, start the next one, do everything, learn. We're doing multiple projects all at once, trying to share lessons between project A, project B, project C, more or less concurrently. And many of our colleagues are doing the same. So in order to not repeat mistakes, and in order to repeat the synergies and the wins and the lessons we've learned, we need to share information really fast, faster than can be done through finish the project, deliver a presentation to a conference, let some people see it. That's a multiple year sharing cycle. If we're going to hit the kind of climate imperatives that you talked about at the beginning of your presentation, we have to learn to share faster, and limited access web pages might be a way to do that.
I think you're right. I mean, the other thing that we see really commonly on sites is that guys use their emails as a repository of data. So, oh, where's that detail? Oh, he sent me the SK. It's in my email. Let me just load it from my email. That's a terrible data management tool, right? So there has to be a better way. And so one of the things we're trying to do is serve up the right data to the right people at the right times. And we feel like the web page is probably a good strategy for that. We're not sure. It's all experimental, right? It's all up for debate. But I think you're right. I think you're totally right. It's a great way to share, and we have found that it's an effective way to get the data in the hands of the guy on the ladder who's putting the detail together. Because they work off their phones nowadays in many sectors. We see it over and over, especially in the residential sector. Yeah. People are using these digital tools as repositories.
It amazes me that more phones don't get dropped from ladders and scheduling than do.
They do. They just got good cases, so they last longer. Ed, just a quick question while I turn it over to the crowders. What software language are you coding in? That's from David.
Well, it depends on what you're up to. So SketchUp is, not to get too nerdy, but SketchUp uses Ruby and JavaScript. Rhino, my primary language of choice, is a language called Python. It's the easiest and most fun. But in order to do web page coding, you need to be able to do HTML and JavaScript as well. You don't have to, but it really helps. All of the graphical stuff that you see there is all built in a library called D3, which is a framework for JavaScript. So you kind of have to, depending on what you're up to, you might have to know a couple different languages, depending on what software you're up to. But if you can do Python and JavaScript, you're in really good shape, in my opinion.
Okay, Scott, go ahead and ask your question, and then I will try to manage the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks, Ed. I hate to use the phrase garbage in, garbage out, but if we're going to scale up net zero design, especially at the measured utility level, we need to improve our modeling assumptions. I'm talking internal loads, schedules on the occupancy level, et cetera. We just need more data to be collected and stored so that we can know what's happening. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, you're 100% right? One of the things that we've struggled with when trying to get other people to build building information models is exactly that problem. Can you really explain to a junior CAD operator in some giant shop how they need to enter Lambda values for material parameters or something? I mean, it's really hard. So we end up rebuilding a lot of building information models ourselves in order to try and manage that. I think the other piece of that puzzle is learning from our own projects. So just like you're saying, oh yeah, I actually I came up with a nice scheduler for that one office project I worked on a year ago. Where does that get logged? Where does that information persist? Is it embedded in a tool so that when I'm working on the next one, I can sort of just easily roll it out? We somehow have to sort of keep a log or a record of all of these amazing things that everyone is making in their firms. I'm sure if you're anything like me, you've probably made all sorts of tools that you forgot about. Right? As you're working through hundreds of projects over the years, they sort of linger on your Dropbox somewhere or in your server. You sort of forget that, oh yeah, I solved that problem. Then I forget about it.
Yeah, and I'd love to get past the intellectual property perspective too, and like, can we share schedules and things we come up with? I think that's a big hurdle as well.
Oh, totally. And I think sharing tools is also really important. I mean, I personally am a big fan of the open source world. I mean, one of my other universes working in the coding universe, I mean, that's a big part of the coding universe, right? Is the open source community and the open source ideology, the idea of sharing these really powerful frameworks so that everybody can do their jobs better and faster and more easily, more accurately. And as Monty pointed out when he started this whole session, that's a core value of the Passive House community: sharing of information and transparency, the sort of open source mindset. And it's been critical to the growth of Passive House in North America and around the world. And I think it's a hugely important value for us to continue as we think about these tools. How do we share? How do we keep them open? How do we keep them transparent? How do we keep them accessible?
Yeah, just on that point is, if we're trying to just improve 2%, you know, what about being sharing and open and keep this community? What if we jump to 3 or 4% because we left our egos at the door and we just was like, how do we scale this? Because it, you know, it can't be done in 10 years, it needs to be done now. And even as I did get things organized, Damien, you're next. But this is a fun challenge today, folks. Again, I was looking forward to this, and this is just, again, blowing my mind of all the chats. Damien, why don't you go next? And I know you're going to leapfrog.
No, I didn't particularly have a question.
No, but you had a comment that I wanted you to fire it up because I thought it was good. So
yeah, look, this is a problem I've faced many, many times as a project manager in IT. Ed's in the perfect position to see the problem because he works right across the entire bandwidth of the process. But in fact, making a common language to say, this is how we describe these functions, and those functions can now be handed off to a different piece of software which will use them for a different bit. And then after that person has added value, it needs to come back. This is the commonality of information packet that industries struggle for. You know, and I've worked a lot in banking, and in banking, even defining what a payment is should be a done deal, but hasn't been done so far. So it is turns into a monster, but you know, full power. We absolutely need to do it to make this a scalable challenge.
Well, Damien, I totally right. You're totally right. Right. In my opinion, the challenge here is not on the physics modeling. As I said, that's largely well understood at this point. It's about data management. And that task is no different whether you're in architecture or you're in banking or you're in coding or whatever you're doing, right? I mean, the question of data management, data fidelity, garbage in, garbage out, these are not unique to architecture, right? And so we have a lot to learn as architects and designers from all those other disciplines, right? There's a lot that's been thought about by really smart people, and we need to start drawing that into our own discipline. I totally agree.
One thing that is interesting is our friends at Google, the monster, are actually moving to, let's say, splatter modeling. Throw the data out in big flat models and then get AI to see where the common factors are and build relationships between it. So they build a data model from actually saying, splat, I have no idea what this has in common with that, but these two should be related. And the AI goes through and by iteration actually says, oh, this and that seem to be highly correlated, and they're actually measuring a similar thing. And this is transformation. Yeah. Anyway, that's the end of me.
Cool.
No worries. Thanks, Damien. Again, great. Again, I knew I wanted to get you in there. I'm just going to go up. Adam from New Orleans, you just sent me a private message. Why don't you ask your question? Because, again, it's a bit broad and can stir up some conversation. And then I'm going to go back up to, I think it was Tekel. So.
Wonderful.
Adam,
thanks, Sean. And yeah, thank you, Ed. Thank you, Sean. I'm a total novice at all of this, but I'm as listening to you speak about a consortium or a way to catalog everything, I'm wondering, is there an international building standard like an ISO 9000 or an ISO certification system that we could use as a model or a platform or a system to catalog all of the information we have regarding a passive structure, heating, cooling, wall design, etc.? Does that exist, or is it something we could model from?
Well, on the building information management side, I can speak to that. There's a couple of attempts at that. There's the GBXML format, there's the IFC format. I don't know that any of them have ever been that successful. I think there's been a lot of, for whatever reason, they haven't really worked out. I'm sure some of the folks on the call smarter than I could probably speak to that, but they haven't really been that effective. I mean, there has been attempts at it. There's been very serious attempts at it and a lot of money put into it. Obviously, as you can imagine, this is a problem across the AEC industry. What's a roof? What's a wall? What's a window? What's a window wall? Those types of questions in terms of the modeling are still ambiguous, and they vary from program to program. And so, yeah, largely what it means in practice is we end up kind of building out our own tools to manage that stuff, or trying to use as many of the standards as possible, but then adapting them to our own workflow, because it is still so heterogeneous across platforms, across frameworks.
And yeah, on that note, if you've got a jig, please let the Passive Accelerator know. Again, use that email. Tekel, you had a question again about 10 minutes ago,
yeah.
But go for it if you remember.
Yeah, my question was about the software, different types of software. Do you have to have an IT background in order to be able to do such kind of data handling like you are doing it? Do you have an IT background, or do we have to learn some Rhino and JavaScripting by now to specialize in these areas? How do you see the future going?
That's a super good question. I mean, I don't know what other people think. I do not have any sort of IT background at all. I was a film major, which is a long way of saying I was pounding nails as soon as I graduated college. And then I worked as a carpenter for, 5-6 years before becoming an architect. That's my background. I have picked up a lot of this stuff along the way because we wanted to sort of build our own tools, because we wanted to do better work, do more accurate work, stop screwing things up, stop making mistakes. And we sort of built one piece at a time over time with an eye towards practical implementation and using them in our real day-to-day workflows. I'm sure it would be awesome if I had actually studied this stuff as an undergraduate or graduate. That would probably make my life a lot easier. But no, I don't think you do. I think given the democratization of coding and the open source nature of the way that coding has happened, and the massive amounts of online learning platforms that are available for free, there's almost no excuse. I mean, there's literally thousands of hours worth of free tutorials on YouTube that anyone could pick up tomorrow if they wanted to learn any of this stuff. It's just a matter of asking. It's just a matter of giving it a shot. I don't see any real barriers in that sense. And no, I don't think you do have to have any specialist background, but maybe other people who do disagree. And I'm sure a real software developer who took a look at what I've done would be like, oh, no. But that's sort of what I'm saying is these are jigs. These are sloppy. They're not perfect. They're not software. You're not selling them to other people. You're using them in a way that makes your job easier, more effective. You know what I'm saying? That's my suggestion anyway.
Again, thanks, Ed. Jeffrey Roden, you had a couple of questions. Maybe just leave it to one. But I know
we can talk later, Jeffrey.
No, again, I know you had a few in the queue there, but have one, and then I can get Caitlin that had a question. So go ahead, Jeff.
Well, one of the things that strikes me about this whole conversation, everyone can hear, right? I think I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah, you're good, Jeff.
Is that these are problems which have been solved in other sectors of our economy, like 30, 40 years ago. I mean, I'm an industrial engineer, and we're talking about stuff that was developed in the 1920s.
Yeah. But never implemented in the architecture field for some crazy reason, right? We don't do it. It's insane.
Yeah, it's not. And this is a huge discussion, but these are problems that have been solved before. And I think one of the things is that we've got to get beyond the we're different frame of mind. We are different, and it's architecture, it's design, but at the same time, we have to build at lower costs so people can afford to live in what the heck we build. I mean, that's my focus, and I'll just leave it at that.
I don't disagree at all, and I think you're 100% right. There's so much to learn from other industries which have improved productivity over the last 50 years as the AEC industry has gone backwards. Right? It's pathetic the level of productivity in the entire AEC industry that includes construction, includes architecture. We have so much to learn from the other industries around us and the other professionals who've looked at exactly these questions. I 100% agree.
And I'm under a gag order from Sean, so.
That's what happens when you got good ideas, Jeff. You know, no. Again, the fact that we have still 118 people, I want to respect everybody. And if we got down to like 20, we could have a bit more open mic, Jeff. But again, thanks everyone for staying. Again, just I'm sure everyone's heart's kind of pumping from just the excitement of what Ed's done to us tonight. And I hope this kind of spurs further discussions. I think one of the reasons why I love this, Ed, is just with this whole event, it was like, okay, let's keep the group together. But recently, it was like, okay, we're coming back every week, but like, what do we do with this? What do we do next? And if we can figure out a way to just gain those extra couple of percents per project, that when we get out of this COVID and we're starting to ramp in our projects, it's like, oh man, I know all these people that are doing this. Let me pose these problems to these people so we can ramp this and scale this. And just the way you phrase it with the jig, because again, I'm kind of a carpenter background too, is just, how good a jig is, to move things forward. It takes a little while to get it. But once you've got it, you've just pumped out 100 of them because the jig works so well. And I just,
well, too, Sean, like so you come from construction background, the same conversation we're having is had in the shop. Should I build the table? Should I take the day to build the jig so that it works well? Or should I just pile up some books on top of the sawhorse because that'll hold the wood in the right place and then I'll just make the cut and be done? Yeah. These are the same questions across industries, right? We wrestle with the same issues no matter what we're talking about. Do I take the time to set up a process that works really well? Or do I just kind of muddle through and get this one to work and then sort of hope the next one is easier? It's the same question. We have the same question in the shop all the time. It's no different, I don't think.
I know people are going, so again, please feel free to say your goodnight and go. Again, thanks for everyone for sticking around. It is amazing. I'm going to stay. I know my wife will probably get me around 6, but I think I squeezed maybe another 15 minutes out of it tonight to keep this going. Ed, again, you can leave whenever you want, but I'm going to make you stay until I leave because this is just awesome. So
fine, happy to answer questions.
Okay, I know Caitlin had a question about retrofits, and if she wants to pop on and ask about it. For those that missed it, I know that Pembina Institute had a webinar and is really kind of focusing on retrofits and talking about prefab, and I think this is a little bit of a question. So again, I'm sure we're all zoomed out and have lots going on, but I mean, it's really cool that we're moving from new builds and really trying to gear and focus of how do we scale this to the bigger. And look at the number that Ed said of just if anyone walks away and thinks that they don't have enough work, come back and call Ed and say, what was that number again? How much work do I got to do tomorrow? And can I work on Saturday? Because I need some help here. So hopefully people know we've got a lot of work to do in life. Sorry, Caitlin, if you're there, pop on and ask your question.
Sure. I'm sorry. This is my first happy hour with the Passive House Accelerator, so I'm excited to be here, but I might have missed some background. My question, I guess, was for Ed, but if there's someone else, hi Ed, working in the realm of the same practice, is we have a lot of buildings to retrofit. There's a lot of existing building stock that needs to meet these standards, and we have somewhere between 4 and 8 inches to make a bunch of buildings net zero. And for a lot of buildings that aren't historic or aren't landmarked or don't have any significant exterior detailing, the idea is to go on the outside. And a process for typifying solutions for buildings that are standard, I think there's probably 7 types that I can think of in New York City, for example, or even across the state. And NYSERDA is working on this, I know, but a way of streamlining the process of generating models and then responding. Seems like we need to have fabricators involved. I know NYSERDA is pushing that. One, does the current jig communicate? It seems like it has to. It can't be that hard to make that. But do we know the fabricators who are looking at this? Are there any fabricators on this call? Manufacturers, do we have any insight on how we build up that network communication stream capability? That's kind of a big question, but
yeah, I know
it's one I'm thinking about a lot.
It's a great one. Ed, go ahead and you chime in, and then again, if you go back if you can catch up in the chat, there were a bunch of different manufacturers that chimed in there. But Ed, go ahead first.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to agree. I mean, I started this by talking about retrofits because that's probably 60 or 70% of our office. You know, we showed that Candela project, new construction, multifamily. That's fun. That's awesome. It's not really what we do, to be honest. Mostly what we're working on are retrofit projects. That's mostly what we're up to, because for all sorts of reasons. But I totally agree with you that it's A, it's more complicated, and B, I think in many ways it's our challenge in New York. You know, you're in Beijing, you're in Shanghai, you have different challenge. In New York, Boston, Pittsburgh, our challenge is what to do with these shitty old buildings. Like that, we got to figure out what to do with them. That's our lot. To your specific question, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I sort of had a lot of luck with that first round of the Retrofit NY program. You know, they did some great projects, but I don't think they had a lot of buy-in from the manufacturing side. I think they were a little disappointed in that, if I understand it correctly. Had some great successes, but I think they wished they had more connections with manufacturing. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to make those, to bridge that divide. I really don't. I'm sure somebody on the call is much better, can speak to that much better than I. It's hugely important, though. I don't disagree.
Caitlin, are you familiar with what the Rocky Mountain Institute is doing with their Realize project? Have you seen that information? It's a retrofit project. It's panelized. It's essentially figuring out how to take a pre-panelized system and put it exactly like you're talking about on the exterior, but they're taking it a step further and figuring out how to retrofit the mechanical systems and upgrade the ventilation. If you haven't seen what they're up to,
myself,
yeah, check it out. They're partnered up with the Passive House Institute US, but I mean, in the scheme of things, the differences are fairly minor when it comes to a concept like that. So yeah, if you just look up Rocky Mountain Institute, actually I'll post a link in the chat to it so that you can find it pretty easily, but that might be a way to.
Yeah. Jeff, I see that you unmuted yourself, so I take it you wanted to chime in?
Sean, no, I didn't. Nothing in particular. Thanks.
Hey, Sean, one of the things that we've been working on but haven't really completed is a playbook of sorts. So we do a lot of retrofits. Actually, we only do retrofits, and at least in the passive house world. And I mean, I think a playbook of sorts could be created where it at least gets you 80% of the way there. I mean, every project's going to be a little different. You're going to have different types in different areas, whether it's an addition, it's 4 stories, it's 5 stories. But I do wonder if a kind of combination between the jig and and getting a set that's like at 80% that a lot of people can use on a typical building type of 2-width or 3-width or frame. I think there's enough of us doing it where a playbook of sorts could be at least part of the equation.
Is it really just variations on
something?
theme? You know,
go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, good.
Yeah, sorry, Michael, we'll come back to you, Michael. Go ahead, Andrew.
On the whole idea of playbook, I think there's a role for the public sector to play in this. I mean, there's grant funding out there. They're supporting projects directly. Like, why not kind of make as condition on the grants that are given out, require projects to actually feed back all the lessons learned, all the detailing, things like that, so that we can actually start to build the playbook, but it's not at the cost of individual firms doing a lot of work and saying, oh, okay, I got to now give this up. No one else is doing this. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I think there's an opportunity there with public funding that's already flowing to actually bring it back, these resources back to the public.
I can add to that a little bit. Andrew, you're totally right. I think that's an awesome idea. We have seen some success with the NYSERDA Buildings of Excellence program, which is requiring exactly what you're describing. So as contingent on getting that funding, which is a funding for high performance building, you have to commit to not only do a lessons learned report, you have to do a whole submission where you provide all your details. You also have to provide a year's worth of monitored data. So they're actually requiring not only that you provide all your details and your as-built and your lessons learned, but you actually have to provide real monitor data for a year after the project completion. So we're starting to see that with some agencies like NYSERDA, because you're exactly right. Like that's a great idea. If we can sort of convince folks to make more of this stuff open source and make it more open and transparent, I think we could all benefit from that really, really strongly. So in New York, at least, we're seeing a little bit of that, a little bit.
Michael Kramer, you want to pop on? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I think it's we're really talking around variations on a theme, right? So there are only a handful of ways to tackle the same problem, and physics and chemistry is at the very basis of what we're talking about. Sort of applied physics, applied chemistry, and thinking through air barrier continuity, thermal continuity, moisture barrier continuity, vapor barrier continuity, all of those sorts of things. So finding a common set of themes that we all have to sort of organize ourselves around. What is collectively do we consider to be the important vapor barrier continuity, the moisture barrier continuity, and all those sorts of things. So that's the way I organize at least my realm. And Monty and I work for RDH, so it's all about keeping the outside out and the inside in, and that's our world. It's all variations on the same set of themes, and I think that would be a good way to kind of organize ourselves.
Again, the chat's amazing. So yeah, Michael, how's outer space tonight? Your wisdom from the space station.
You would not believe the journey I've been on the last few months. I will tell you. So I run the Seattle office for RDH. I went to Washington D.C. on March 3rd and have been there. So I am now sitting in my parents' basement in St. Louis, Missouri.
Well, I'm glad you're staying safe.
Staying safe.
Go ahead, Ed.
Just to add to that, Michael, I think you're totally right. I think the complexity that we've run into with retrofits in particular is that there's so much variation in the existing building and there's so much unknown. So you have to be able to take, just like you're saying, what are my core values here? What am I striving towards? Be it thermal comfort or moisture resilience or energy or whatever. How do I adapt it to this particular building that has asphalt shingles for siding instead of normal wood siding, or whatever the case is, or
it's a great vapor barrier.
Totally, we have a lot of that in New York.
Put all the insulation outside of that, you're good.
Yeah. The other thing we run into though is there's all these unknowns. You think you know, and then as soon as you open the wall up, you go, oh, this building is built out of crepe paper. I guess we need to completely change the way that we're thinking about it.
So how do we take those things out of the equation though? How do you get those things out of the equation? Do we really need to go into the wall to do that?
Yeah, right.
Are there other areas that we can focus on to kind of lose all of this brain damage that we spend on trying to figure out what's wrong with what we've got, and just encapsulate or something along those lines? But just like we have clients that have like massive water ingress problems. It's like, so like they want us to investigate. It was like, well, you got water coming in. What else do you need to know? So how about we keep the water from getting in and just start from there?
Michael, don't make your job so easy. You won't get paid. You gotta tell them, oh, it's very difficult. Take a very good analysis, right? Like, come on.
It's the people side of the equation that's the hard part. The physics side is easy. It's, hot goes from moisture vapor goes from higher concentration to less. It's all second law of thermodynamics. It's super easy. But you throw people in the mix and it screws everything.
And as we're seeing, again, I hate to be so blunt, but we can't fix stupid, and we're seeing a lot of that right now. Okay, sorry, Sai, you had a question earlier on that I know you wanted to do, and then Mina, you had a good comment that I thought we could dive into as well. So Sai, you still there? I know you're there somewhere.
I am. Thank you, Sean. I was going to ask Ed, and I kind of lost it. Are you running daylight analysis, and what type of analysis are you scripting in Grasshopper?
Yes, it's not a huge part of our workload. It's not a required output for passive house certification when if we're doing lead projects or we're collaborating with teams on lead projects. Then it might be something that we would look at, spatial daylight autonomy or useful daylighting index values, and we would typically do that through the Radiance engine in Grasshopper, which is obviously implemented through those Honeybee and Ladybug plugins. Those are incredibly powerful tools, and we try and leverage those wherever possible. You know, those are amazing open source tools that have really changed our workflow pretty significantly.
So I think we need to stop for a second and raise our glasses to Ed and just say, you rock. Thank you for taking this whole after-hour party to a whole new level. I even forgot to dive into the top shelf stuff, and Mark pointed out that I wasn't keeping up because I just would love it. So Ed, cheers, man. Thanks.
Way to go, Ed.
Thanks for sticking around.
Nicely done.
Cheers.
Ed.
Thank you guys. Thank you again for setting this up. You guys are awesome.
Well, you came in with a big bat and been hitting home runs for the last 53 minutes here. So, or actually, you can say the first part too. And there's a couple of new middle names that you've been given, but you can go find them in the chat. All good though.
Yeah, you say that.
Wow. Okay. I think I'm kind of, no, I know I'm not caught up. There's like still 30 questions from the presentation, but I don't want to go back to that. That's a cool building, but I want to stick with this. So if anyone wants to just chime in here, I know we've got about 80 people, so just respect jumping in, but who just said that, go ahead.
Michael.
Thank you. Go ahead, Michael. I'll get into you.
So Ed, I have to ask the hard question.
Yeah, please. No,
what happens when the window frame corners leak? Where does the water go?
Yeah, right. No,
okay, that's the last question about the project. I want to stick to this stuff.
I'm sorry.
This is the hot stuff. That building's really built. It's moved on. No. It is a question,
super important. That's where all the problems are. You know, with the frame corner leaks, where's the water go?
Yep, absolutely. What are you thinking when you say that though? Because it's all flashed on the outside. We brought that flashing in. Or is there a specific part there that you're?
So you had a continuous sealant joint on all four sides around the front perimeter as well as the interior perimeter. So when the frame corner leaks, it's leaking in behind that exterior seal.
Gotcha. Right. So I'm not sure if it was obvious in there. So part of the issue that we had with the exterior seal is it doesn't actually seal along the base. So there's a sill block on the base, and what they did was they sealed just along the base, not to the cladding. So there are weep holes, and then there's a whole cladding element, which is actually not sealed at the base. There's a sill pan that clicks in underneath that aluminum cladding there and allows you to connect to those weeps there. So we're actually a little bit open along the bottom, which was part of our unhappiness with that seal from an airtightness perspective. You're totally right on the waterproofing.
So you have the interior air seal. That's the one that does all the work.
Yeah,
kind of. Air and moisture barrier. That's the one that does the work. The exterior seal.
Yeah, it's
as
really
long as it's from the window frame to the flashing, that's not a problem. But it's from the window frame to the waterproofing, that's a problem.
Right, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yes, that is a potential failure point there. Absolutely.
Michael, I'll just interject and just say, because I saw the tape, the tape will wick. We'll take care of it. Didn't you see the tape? It's good tape. It's huge. Let's take care of everything. It's good tape.
No, I don't. The tape is fine. I'm just saying when the frame corner leaks.
Yeah.
You've got a section that leaks like here. You've got an outer seal and an inner seal, and it leaks in here. What happens?
Right, where does it go? So, no, I think you're not wrong. You know, building in those belt and suspenders approach to all of this stuff is super important, right? Yeah, totally.
Just something to think about. And
good point. Yeah.
And we can talk offline about ways that we've addressed that and solved that problem.
Oh yeah. No, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
And then take that conversation and then come back to the Passive Accelerator and post it so we all can hear about it. Okay? Like
yes, of course.
Silo conversations are great, but like
agrees with it, though. I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Because there is a problem with it, and that it does allow more air under the window. So.
Yeah. No. It's like talk among yourselves. And then come back to the group. That's what you gotta do. Stuart, hopefully your daughter is still sleeping. Question about rebuilds versus retrofit. Fire away.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you're talking about a lot of retrofits there. At what point do you, or how do you know when not to do retrofit and just knock and start again?
I don't. That's a really good question. I don't know.
Since I
I suppose sorry to cut across. Can you use, I suppose, the system you're talking about, that whole jigsaw system? At this point, cost benefit analysis goes, actually just knock it, start again, it'll be cheaper, quicker, faster.
I think, again, I know a bunch of other people are popping here, but I think if the structure is intact, I mean, again, dealing with single family homes, if the wood is good, then just keep the structure and then put on the sweater and put on the right layers. So that's kind of my brief question to that between a rebuild versus a retrofit is, keep as much of that material as there, look at the embodied carbon of that material, like keep it as much as you can, then apply the Pascal's principles, put the sweater on, put on the layers, and like go from there. So I think that is the difference between rebuild versus.
Can I come back quickly with that?
Sure, I got excited. I'll pause. Put myself on mute.
No, I'll just come back very quickly if you don't mind. So you talk about wood mainly. So over in Ireland, it's all concrete. We got cold slabs, cold walls, cold this, cold that. And what you end up doing is, if you do it wrong, you end up with damp and mold. I've seen people go, "Oh, I'll insulate stuff, block up the air ducts, block up this, block up that," and next of all, there's mold everywhere, and it's a disaster. So there's little bit of knowledge. It's dangerous, as we all know. So I suppose it's that thing of like, how do you fix a concrete slab? You don't. You have to dig it up. That's where I'm trying to.
The only time I've ever seen a concrete slab dealt with is with the whole thing is exterior insulated around.
Yeah, big skirts.
Yeah.
And it's, Stuart, I always say is like, if you don't bring the 5 Pascal's principles to play, if you take 4 to the 5, you're in trouble. You got to bring all 5. They're just like a big party. They like to hang out with each other. And if you ever try to like pick one, you are in trouble. The 5 are just a fun bunch of people. And, again, I think Dr. Feiss is giving me a high five right now. So.
Yeah, and I have to, from our perspective, it's almost easier because we work on a lot of heritage projects, a lot of landmark projects where it's not even a question that we entertain too often. You will be keeping that street front facade and you will be maintaining it in the way that it was historically. And then it's up to us to figure out how to manage that, which is nice because it kind of takes that question off the table, but it's an important question. And I don't know. I think Sean's model is great. That idea of attending to the structure. I don't know. It's just not one that we wrestle with too often, I have to admit. That's a great question. It's important.
I can add something on that. We're actually working on a 20-story tower retrofit in Ontario, Canada, and the analysis that the owner did, it's an affordable housing provider, is the cost to tear down and rebuild that was X times more than actually trying to retrofit it. And so we're now working on an Enerfit retrofit. So for those who aren't familiar, that's the Passive House retrofit standard. And so we're doing that. We're keeping the balconies. We went through various iterations to come up with a solution that worked, that was buildable, cost effective, and met our thermal requirements. And actually doing it all with just about 4 to 6 inches of insulation on the wall, and still meeting our Enerfit. So when you get buildings and these towers, it seems like definitely there's a big financial case for retrofitting versus actually tearing down. And that was for outside of any passive house analysis.
Just one other thing that I can add to that discussion. One other thing that's going to really force the issue in New York is we have a new carbon tax on buildings. It goes into effect in 2024. So I think we're going to see a whole raft of building owners who are going to be pushed to these types of retrofits. They're going to have to, otherwise they're going to be paying out the nose because of the new carbon tax that we have going into effect pretty soon. It's not going to bite everybody right away. 2024, it'll bite 30-40% of the buildings, but by 2030, when it ratchets down a little bit, it's going to hit 60-70% of the buildings in New York. So we're going to see a huge number of buildings that are going to have to figure out some way to retrofit to improve performance and drive down carbon emissions.
I know most of you are experts, but for those that are still kind of rookies to the Passivhaus world, someone asked about, making sure all the rookies know about the 5 standards. So in unison, should we all start? Continuous airtightness, lots of insulation, high efficiency HRV or ERV, depending on your location, minimizing thermal bridges, and high performance windows. So I kind of dumb it down as you're getting a sweater, you're gift wrapping it, you're putting some skookum windows in your space. The sweater takes care of the thermal bridges, and make sure you got a set of lungs in there. So if you don't bring all those to the party, you're gonna have issues. So hopefully that helps Todd and some of the new people. Again, thanks for everyone for sticking around. Again, I just can't keep up to the chat tonight, guys. I'm sorry, I'm doing my best. Anyone else have any thing to chime in about this, the whole thing about jigs? I mean, I know when Ed went off, everyone talked about 1,000 different things of what we can do, but I think it comes back down to is work policy. I know in Canada is doing well, and it's still maybe 12 years out. The UN's on board, so policy is definitely coming. It may be 10 years out. The question is how do we shrink it to now? So we're good with the policy.
Ed, hey, Justin.
Yeah, hey, Justin.
Go ahead.
How are you doing? So I think with all of us, we are, and I don't know, I can speak for everybody, we're horribly busy, and you always are inventing these things as you go along. And I've talked to you about this, but I'm just curious, like, how much time out of your normal workday do you spend on developing these things? Because this is always an ongoing project, right? And we need to be constantly thinking about how it integrates with different certifications. So all these elements which are disparate, how they come back together in a single way, right?
I mean, I totally agree. In terms of total hours, I don't know. It's hard to say because they're small projects as we go along. They're like little individual nuggets to help us do a specific task that we're having a headache with, which is why I use that jig metaphor. I mean, that's how it is in the shop. You're like, oh, I need to make this cut. All right, what do I need to set up? I need to set up this scaffold or these sawhorses. I need to set up this to hold the piece in place. And it's an immediate, it's not something you would think about a week ahead of time. Be like, oh yeah, I'll do a plan for the jig. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of come upon the problem and then you have to immediately solve the problem. And I just have a particular weird personality quirk where if I have to do something twice, it just makes me angry and I get really bad at it and I get really rammy and I start to do it badly. So it's important for me to figure out a tool to do it for me. I'll do it once. Boy, if you make me do it twice, I'll just get really angry. So I just end up building these tools as we go along. So it's not with some big conception in mind. It's small one-off solutions to individual problems that actually solve a problem at hand. Because I got to get a report out the door at the end of the day, just like you're saying. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's not like we make a budget of time or something at the beginning of the year. We just kind of build them as we go to try and solve specific solutions.
Well, Ed, and I think it just comes down to just, your passion. And because you love this stuff, you don't care about time. You're just like, I'm going to do this. And, and you just plug away. And the fact that I've seen a good portion of the people on the after hours week after week, you just love this stuff and you're learning and you want to do this. And the more that people I love that Saturday post you had because people will work if they love what they're doing. It doesn't matter if it's a work day or not, you'll just get it done. And if you're able to find these solutions,
listen, I mean, to that end, it's important to remember that this stuff is really important. And I mean, we were talking about the magnitude of the problem. This is really important stuff. And I don't know, that's kind of a really fortunate position for us all to be in, to have the opportunity to work really hard at something that matters. That's a really important thing. That's not something that everybody gets to have all the time. And so you shouldn't sort of take that for granted. And I think it's really important to be serious about attacking these problems.
And with that too, Ed, I think I can speak for maybe the group is, because we share that same kind of passion, we all appreciate everyone's individual efforts to just collaborate and bring this together and being respectful of all that. And I think that's why this community is just so cool to be a part of, because, we all want to work hard, but we also want to just feel appreciated with that and then be able to share it and feel like you gain some of that respect of, you know, with some either quick pat on the back or, you know, and that's kind of why what's fun about all these socials is that we can highlight some of these amazing projects. And, you know, again, week after week, we come back with so many cool projects, and we've got all these conferences and webinars lined up, and just the willingness to share is just amazing. And so again, thanks for everyone to just feel the need to share. And you know, if you get a small pat on the back, or if you don't get anything, you're just happy to just keep this ball rolling. So it is great. This is just awesome. I just take another, you know, Ed, cheers. I'll just give you another one because this is just too good. I know I can hear that my wife's cooking dinner, and so this is coming to an end, and I'm just like, I've scraped 7 minutes out of extra tonight. So I know I'm in like bonus land. And
well, look, if anybody still has questions, shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to chat about this anytime. You guys all have my email address, I think. So feel free to get in touch. Be more than happy to talk about this stuff.
Ed, I promise to folks that if they ask questions on the Q&A platform, that we'd beg you to answer them. So
yeah, there you go. We'll follow up on the Passive House Accelerator Q&A platform. Yeah, happy to answer. It's a great idea.
And again, that's the thing is just to keep this knowledge, again, is having that forum, and the Passive Accelerator has done a great job with that, and other associations have done the same thing. And again, we just need to just keep promoting everybody, keep bringing everyone together, and just keep this going. So, you know, I know, you know, if you look at the calendar on the Passive Accelerator of other events coming up, tomorrow you've got the BS and beer. I think it's 3 o'clock Pacific. Again, with Michael. I'm not sure if Michael's still there, but again, another great event. I think they're talking about concrete. Mark, you've got your event on, or sorry, you don't have an event. Your beard has an event on Friday. So again, just keep referencing all these different events to just keep the knowledge going. And at the same time, try to get your work done so you can pay the bills and build some more Passive projects. I'm just, sorry, I was just looking back to see if I missed anything in the chat in the last 3 seconds. Because, and I think Dylan, I give you the phrase of the night of your new nickname for Ed. Oh, shoot, Dylan, if you're there, chime in and say it, because it's like 2 minutes ago, and that's like 30 lines in the feed here. So
I'm pretty sure it was like Edsif House Accelerator or something along those lines. Yeah, something there.
Yeah, it was good. Sorry, everyone. If someone else wants to chime in and ask any questions or make any comments, please do so. Just because, again, you guys have all been quiet, but go ahead.
Personally satisfying professional growth. That's what it's all about. Right?
There you go. There you go.
We do this even if we weren't paid for it.
Yeah,
that's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was PSPG. I think that was
PSPG. That's it.
Love it, Michael.
I will credit my law school professor for that one. That's a quote from my law school, his law school graduation speech. So if you think
it landed with you.
If you think graduation speeches don't matter, they do. PSPG has been my mantra for my career. So
yeah,
why I moved from law to building science. So there you go.
Well, we are lucky for that. You know, that guy deserves a drink, because we're lucky to have you on our side there, Michael. So thanks for that guy.
Ed?
I've always thought that passive or envelope consultants were a lot like lawyers.
Like I said, you know, he's
You're
easy
damn
to say.
straight. Good job.
Yeah.
That's the best one I've heard all night.
Jason State, just to land that bomb for you there, Michael. No, thanks, Jason. Good to see you.
Cheers, Jason. Thank you very much, buddy.
Again, I know, Caitlin, you're still here. Anyone else that's still a newbie that has decided to stick around for an extra hour? Again, I'd love to give you a praise and thank you for being a rookie to the event. I mean, we're in week 9, and realistically, folks, we're going to be here for many more weeks. So if you do have any other projects that you want to showcase and let us know, please, we'll get you into the queue. We've got Graham next week, which is pretty exciting. And I love how you guys know him and are already giving him the gears. So hopefully you can, oh, I love it. What happened to the R value Chewbacca? It's high. That's a hairy animal. yeah, again, thanks for everyone sticking around. Anybody else want to
About
chime in?
2.5 per inch, by the way.
Pardon?
It's about 2.5 per inch, by the way.
And the thing is too is like I know there is a number. I just don't have time to go and Google on the side, but I know that people have like figured out the value of this.
I'm equating that to horsehair insulation and straw bale. So
no, but this is why like I know like someone actually has a number. It's not just like a random number that someone put on a dartboard. Like it's
yak. I mean, it's yak hair. His suit was made out of yak hair. So if you can find the R value of yak hair, that's probably the closest. But Ed, do you have? Could you put up like a demo of that dashboard thing on your website so we could like, so I just kind of want to show my firm owner like what's possible to show client.
No, I'd be happy to. I'll put together something. We obviously for privacy reasons we didn't want to share an actual client's project, but I'd be happy to pull together something that as a sort of explanation, like a generic project. Yeah, totally.
That'd be great.
For sure.
Wait, fur per inch.
So Sean, I think I probably need to hop off pretty soon.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no worries.
Like I said,
again,
totally happy to take more questions through the Accelerator. Would love to. And thank you so much for inviting me to come on. It's awesome that you guys do this. It's really a great thing.
It only gets good because people like you, Ed, and honestly, the fact that you just left a big, huge bomb for us to just nestle with and play with week by week. I think what we'll probably do is like the first 30 minutes is going to be the after party. And then the next 30 minutes is going to be the jig party. It's going to be like, let's come back to Ed May's big.
Someday we'll get back in the shop and we can actually drink in the shop like real carpenters, right?
Yeah. Okay, Ed. Again, thank you very much. I know I've got a couple of minutes here and I'll keep going until my wife tells me that dinner's ready, and I appreciate that she's decided to make dinner and I got to sneak away from doing that tonight. But yeah, other than that, how is everyone else doing? There's some people on that are still stick.
I gotta hop off.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you.
care.